Hey, welcome in everyone to the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by. As soon as I get on the air, somebody gives me a phone call. Yes, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Some people don't know my schedule. Hopefully you do. You're the important ones. Again, 4 p.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday, except, of course, when we do a late night call-in show. So for the late night call-in shows, that comes your way one night each and every week. It was a Wednesday, it was a Friday. It goes back to being a Friday thanks to I Bleed Orange and Tukey G. They have named us for a Friday night call-in show late night. We'll see you at 10 p.m. Eastern time on Friday night. The wardrobe, top to bottom here, brought to you by Fiobach. Fiobach doing a nice job. This is the first time I've ever heard of them, knew of them, and they have dressed me up today. So between the shirt and pardon me, you probably don't want to see the shorts, but they are there as well. The black shorts with the gray shirt. I don't even know what to call this. It's the stretchy material that fits rather well. I'm enjoying my day in Fiobach. So thanks to everyone there at fiobach.com. Thank you so much for the 2 or 3 shirts and the 2 or 3 shorts. And hey, I will wear them proudly, and we will talk about them proudly because, hey, if you want to sponsor the show and deliver some free merch, and if it is as good as advertised and as good as you told me it was going to be, absolutely. So everybody head on over to fiobach.com. Check out the array of wardrobe selections right there. They have all sorts of good stuff that I have yet to look at to date. But hey, one shirt, one pair of shorts, comfy, fits well, looks good. Absolutely. I am a full-fledged supporter at this point. So thank you, Fiobach. And again, you can grab the link in the chat or in the description section of the video, fiobach.com. Has supplied my wardrobe today. Thank you so much for that. We deliver coaches' rankings on this fine Thursday with all of you. We do this each and every off season, and we will get to it in just a second, in which we will also remind everyone the Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. Got together last night with Leanne Herring. It's on the move every Wednesday night, 8:30 Eastern time. Please make that a part, a staple, a priority in your college football week. Each and every week, Leanne and myself, Wednesdays, 8:30 Eastern. We're right here. We're here for you. Transfer portal, high school football recruiting news. We go live with you. We take your calls. Could you ask for anything more? Every Wednesday, 8:30 Eastern. We will finish up our college football coaches rankings for 2025. Maybe today, if we go to overtime, you see the stipulations right there. If you want us to go and finish out the rankings, we can do that today, or we can finish up sometime this weekend, or maybe next Monday. And leave your comments and questions there in the chat, and give me a call as well. Let's dive in on the coaches' rankings. We left you off at number 50, I believe. So we went from 70 all the way up to 50, and maybe we'll get the top 50 in today. And much like the program rankings that we did, I reserve the right to make some changes as we go, because I've looked this over, poured this over, took last year's rankings, of course, and I have tweaked them. I have adjusted them and changed them quite a bit based on some coaches' performances from last season, both good and bad, and how their programs are charting going forward. What is the trajectory of these programs? I found the coach that I had left out, and once we get to him, you'll know a good reason why I may have bypassed him initially, because he was not part of the Power Conference coaching structure just one season ago. Neither was his team. All right, here we go, folks. Before we dive into the rankings, of course, we want to acknowledge everyone in the chat. We got our buddy 79 Jed Buck. Go Buckeyes. We've got Tukey G ready for another afternoon of college football discussion. Again, the call-in line is right there. Leanne says, let's rock and roll. Leanne joining us on Facebook. How about that? Keep that in mind. Matthew says, Mark's got that bling on. I saw that chair. What is going on with my chair? It's a good chair. I don't know what Matthew's going for there. Thought maybe I had a diamond ring in the chair or something, or a gold chain. Got one around my neck. Dave's here, says, I am number one on the coaches list and never been wrong that I can remember. Okay. Dave's got it. All right. Matthew, I've got a love-hate relationship with dry fit. Again, this must be dry fit. I don't know the technical terms, not doing right by Fiobach at this point, but hey, I had never heard of them. They contacted me, said, hey, we'll send you some clothes. If you like them, talk about them. And I said, absolutely, I'll do that. So I selected a couple shirts, a couple pairs of shorts. Hey, they're working out. Afternoon to Jim. Garrison's here. There we go. Oh, the chain. You're talking about the chain. Yeah, the chain. This chain has not left my neck in forever. I forget that it even exists. This gets pointed out to me from time to time when people are like that maybe they've known me for a few weeks or something, and they're all of a sudden, oh, you wear a chain. Yeah, got a chain. And again, I forget that it's even there. It's just always there. That's the bling, Matthew. That's the bling. Okay. Ballard, good to see you, man. Bandy Dandy says, any coach that is winning season at Vanderbilt is a top 50 coach. Not Clark Lee, I don't believe. Do it one more time, Clark. You'll probably reach the top 50. There is a former Vandy coach in the top 50 who had a winning record twice, and not even a close winning record like 7-6, like 9-4. Think you know who that is. To the coaches' rankings. We got so we made it through to the top 50. And I think we left you off at Brent Key, who has risen from 59 to 51. Nice season at Georgia Tech, 7-6. But they did lose 6 football games, and they did lose to Vandy in a bowl game. So Georgia Tech gets a lot of love, and so does Brent Key for that remarkable effort against Georgia, in which they outplayed the Dogs and lost in 8 overtimes. And then, of course, just 2 weeks prior to that, they beat Miami, a top 10 or 12 team in the nation, but they did lose 6 games. All right, we break into the top 50 with Joey McGuire of Texas Tech, and a lot is expected of the Red Raiders. We will have to do a deep dive on the Red Raiders and possibly go look for a Texas Tech beat writer or somebody to come on here to talk about what they've got going with Joey McGuire, because a lot is expected. I heard of a top 25 that's floating out there with Texas Tech on the fringe of the top 10. McGuire's 15-11 in 2 years in Lubbock. Of course, he was just a linebacker coach at Baylor, so he's one of these coaches, along with Sam Pittman comes to mind, and a few others who rose from prominence to prominence from just being a position coach. Went right by the coordinator spot, right by the group of 5 head coaching spot, and right to the big time from a position coach status, and it's worked out pretty well for Joey McGuire. They lost a bowl game to Arkansas to finish at 7-6, and there you go, Joey McGuire, Texas Tech. And maybe I didn't even update those records because Texas Tech pretty much goes 7-6 every year, so it's difficult to see whether I did or not. Might have been there for 2 years, 7-6, 8-5, 7-6. Is I believe what we got. He was 2-0 in bowl games. They lost to Arkansas this past season. Up to number 49, we've got back-to-back coaches who are new to their jobs. and new to Power 5 football from different directions. At number 49, I have to mention this every time I mention this individual. He is the author. This is a phenomenal legacy to have. If you're going to have some kind of oddball legacy, we're not talking about your Tom Brady. You're not Peyton Manning. You're not Tom Brady. You're not Tim Tebow. You're not like an all-time great in your profession. But you've got an oddity of a legacy. You might as well have this one. It's kind of like Robert Horry in the NBA, who averaged about 6 points per game in his career, but is known by NBA fans all over the globe as Big Shot Rob. Robert Horry, because he hit so many big shots to close out NBA playoff and championship games that you get that kind of rep, and that's golden. That is golden. If you can't be an all-time great, be an all-time great in the clutch. And for Frank Reich, that is the author of the biggest comeback in the history of college football. Down 31-0 to Miami, brings back Maryland to win the game 42-41 or 42-40. Then just a few years later in the NFL playoffs, filling in for Jim Kelly, trails the Houston Oilers by 5 touchdowns in an NFL playoff game, wins that one 41-38. And the Bills go on to the Super Bowl a couple weeks later. Well, Frank Reich's the head coach now at Stanford, but we know that he's not going to be the head coach, or we're pretty sure he is not going to be the head coach in 2026. He is just filling in after a horrendous situation involving Troy Taylor, who went 3-9. And Troy Taylor just apparently was an awful human being by all accounts to all sorts of people, players, assistant coaches, front office personnel, workers within the athletic department. So that was investigated, and Andrew Luck, who has become the most powerful GM in college football, Andrew Luck said, that's enough. We do not want this human being coaching our football team, representing our football program. Troy Taylor gone just maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. And Frank Reich, they find him off the scrap heap of the NFL's Carolina Panthers and Indianapolis Colts. And he's the head coach at Stanford. So I think Stanford's in good hands. Frank Reich was a decent head coach in the NFL. I don't think that there's the disparity between head coaches in the NFL and college football that used to exist. There was a day and age when a coach would come from the NFL, like a Pete Carroll, and he would run circles around every coach in college football because they were just so much better, so much smarter, so much more advanced. But that doesn't seem to be the case now. And again, difficult to rank the coaches who have been separated from this level of play for a long, long time. Bill Belichick coming up, Frank Reich here, and a few others, but we rank Frank Reich, Stanford, at number 49. Right next to him, and just a notch higher, basically because of his unprecedented success at UNLV. UNLV, going into Barry Odom's tenure, had arguably the worst football program in the history of FBS play. Like a 27% winning percentage, just horrendous forever. And Barry Odom came within a couple scores of going to a college football playoff. He was marginal at Mizzou. He was in that 6 or 7 win category, finished basically with a 500 record at Mizzou, but did a remarkable job at UNLV. He's back in the power conference ranks at Purdue, and he's got a mess to clean up. We all know it. Purdue went 0-11 against the FBS last year. Barry Odom's going to have a runway to try to bring Purdue football back to respectability, which they last achieved under Jeff Brom just a few years ago. They are only 3 seasons removed from a Big Ten championship game. Barry Odom at number 48. Number 47 is Hugh Freeze, and Hugh Freeze has not done the job at Auburn at 6-7 and 5-7 in his 2 seasons at Auburn, and you should be able to win at Auburn. What is kind of perplexing to me is that Freeze is considered one of the offensive masterminds in football and a quarterback developer. And what was very odd is that he suffers through the 7-loss season with Auburn, in which their pass game was remarkably atrocious, beyond belief. Peyton Thorne was awful. He stuck with Peyton Thorne. You probably don't know this because you just figure Auburn lost 7 games again, so they were just as bad on offense, and they hung on to Peyton Thorne. I don't agree with that move, but Peyton Thorne played a lot better. The Auburn offense actually was good last year. Their pass offense was top 15 to 20 in the country. They just turned the ball over every other play. So Hugh Freeze needs to fix it at Auburn. He's got all sorts of resources to his disposal. This is a program where you can compete for a national championship. This is probably the most inconsistent program in college football that can compete for a national championship. Like, this is probably the low end of the national championship contenders, where you can both say you can be mediocre at Auburn, but you can also compete for national championships. You can probably not say this to this degree. Maybe Miami would be in the same class, but of course, Auburn has been much better and reached higher peaks than Miami since the Canes were last relevant nationally. So Hugh Freeze, of course, 34-15 at Liberty, did a fine job at Ole Miss, but we know how that ended. Off the field issues, but also on the field issues in recruiting. And he was 39-25 at Ole Miss, but you got to kind of question his success because it stemmed in recruiting and recruiting violations. When there was a recruiting class at Ole Miss in which they picked up 3 number 1 position players, Laramie Tunzel, Laquan Treadwell come to mind. And of course, we know that there was some unsavory dealings by Mr. Hugh Freeze at that point. Okay, so at number 47, yes, the aforementioned Hugh Freeze. Let's keep working up the ranks to a coach who is firmly on the hot seat in Norman, Oklahoma. He has coached 3 seasons at a place that has not had a bad stretch since the late 1990s, but they're having one now. 1-10-3 sandwiched in between 6-7, 6-7 for Brent Venables. Of course, he took over a program that was a juggernaut on offense under Lincoln Riley, and before that, Bob Stoops. And again, once Stoops took over in 1999, Oklahoma rolled the Big 12. They owned the Big 12. And here's a defensive guru who has upgraded the defense. This was one of the best defenses in college football last year, but the offense was so incredibly atrocious. I'm going to give him a bit of a break because some of the injuries that this program suffered, offensive line, wide receiver in particular, were at wide receiver unprecedented. But excuses aside, win the football games, Brent Venables. Do not lose to the likes of the teams that you lost to last season, South Carolina and others, even though South Carolina, of course, turned out to be a really good football team. Yeah. 10-3, 6-7, 6-7. Is that 16-10? No, that is 22-17 for Brent Venables on the hot seat at number 46. We certainly will take your calls here at the Voice of College Football, and I believe we've got one coming in. We got our buddy Christian signing in. Christian, what's going on today?
Mark, how you doing, buddy?
I am doing well. I hope you were not waiting long. When I
No,
get into the
not
rankings,
even
I open another window, and therefore I can't see what's going on.
not even 5 minutes, man. You're
Cool.
good.
What's on your mind, sir?
I wanted to talk about some of these coaches, but more specifically, if it's all right, could we switch gears to the Big 12? Because that is a loaded conference with a lot of big names.
Okay, loaded. Deion Sanders, Mike Gundy.
Yep.
Sure. Matt Campbell. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So I was looking on SI.com. They had put their ranking out. This is from the really the Texas Red Raiders site. Someone last name Mendoza had put it out. I didn't see the first name, but Chris Breeler had wrote this article, actually put it out today. But it was very interesting list here. They had Kenny Dillingham of Arizona State number 1, they had, how do you say this? Kalani Satake
Yes,
of
perfect.
BYU.
Nailed it.
Yep. Matt Campbell, number 3 at Iowa State. Chris Kleeman of Kansas State. They did have Dion at number 5. Uh, and the list goes on. But I think what kind of stood out to me about this list
Who do they
was,
consider the worst coach in the conference? I'm just curious.
well, that's where you bring in Scott Frost this year at Central Florida.
There you go. Okay. I've
Yeah.
got him last as well. I've got him last in the country. Okay.
Yeah. Just really an interesting list to round out the top 10. I mean, 8, 9, and 10 are Sonny Dykes, Mike Gundy, and Rich Rod, respectively. Now, some of these coaches too, like you got Scott Frost coming back this year, you got Rich Rod returning this year. Uh, we know what they were able to do with these programs before, and it was really, really good. I guess what I want to get to is you still have to see them in the return home, if you will. You know, you still got to see what they do on the field this season in year 1 as they get back to where they once had success. But I do think in the list, it is fair to kind of put them around where they were. I mean, I could see Rich Rod being up there top 10, but I don't know, man. Like, is it fair to put Scott Frost all the way at the bottom? And do you think that was put there because of his Nebraska stint?
Well, absolutely. That's all we can go on at this point. So for me, I put Scott Frost as the worst coach in the country.
Mm, all
I've
the
got
way at
him
the
dead
bottom.
last at number 70 in the power
Okay.
conferences. And the only guy that I would consider to be worse is probably I'll review this one more time would be Brent Brennan of Arizona. So think of it this way, Ballard. So I don't want to dismiss what Scott Frost accomplished at UCF because you just outlined it. They were remarkable for 2 seasons there under Scott
Right.
Frost, and they were nothing when he got there. So he did a fine job at UCF. So this is not a resume ranking for me. This is a ranking right this second, as
Gotcha.
best I can determine. Like if Bobby Bowden and Joe Paterno were around as arguably 2 of the 5 greatest coaches of all time, but they were at the very end, I would not rank them based on their legacy as 2 of the greatest of all times. I would rank them like 30th or 40th because that's what they were at the end.
Right.
They weren't very good. I'm doing the same thing with Scott Frost as best I can. His stay at Nebraska was just atrocious. They never made a bowl game. They had a losing record in the
Mm,
Big Ten every year. They had a losing record overall every year. They had the worst one score record in college football. And this despite taking over a program that was only 1 season removed from being 9-4 under Mike Riley. And he brought in Scott Frost decent recruiting classes, like top 20, 25 recruiting classes, but they were just horrendous. And his teams were not prepared. They broke down late in games. They had bad fundamentals. They turned the ball over constantly. He never corrected issues. He got out coached. His game management skills were terrible. I can recall a number of them offhand. And he also was just not a good leader of men off the field either. He had, I don't want to really go into what is somewhat substantiated in regards to his off field conduct, but that was also not uh, a strong role model for young men.
for sure. And
He didn't
then
do
let me
anything
ask
good at
you,
Nebraska. There's the bottom line. He did
yeah,
nothing positive there.
well, I know. I mean, he took a program that was once really, really good in the 90s, was pretty solid in the early 2000s, and then he basically ran it into the ground, is what he did.
Yeah, Mike
Uh,
Riley wasn't anything fantastic, but yeah. Now, see, Kevin here says that Scott Frost lost a lot of close games, and therefore he could not be considered the worst coach in the country. I would agree with that if he had coached,
yeah,
let's say, 1 season or even 2 seasons. Like if he had taken over this program and they were playing really well, but they kept losing 1 score games, then I would say, okay, that's bad luck, and that's a bad bounce of the ball here and there, and they're close. But when you do that after 6 years, that is coaching. That is coaching. That your team is not prepared. They have poor fundamentals. And again, I recall a game at Minnesota that I could go through the litany of errors, coaching errors that he made in the fourth quarter that made absolutely no sense. And he did that over and over and over. And when teams blow big leads, again, one time, two times, that's going to happen. But when you lose 25 or 30 games by one score, that's coaching.
Yeah. What would you I got to ask you about a certain coach though. Specifically, I want to get your thoughts on where you stand when you look at a coach like Mike Gundy in Oklahoma State. Obviously, he's been around a long time at the Cowboys program back to 04, 05, I think. I think
Yep.
05. And, he started out that year about 4 or 5 wins, not the best. But then he won back to back bowl games. He lost back to back bowl games. He won 3 straight bowl games and stuff. Anyway, he's had I think, an amazing career at Oklahoma State. However, when I look at Oklahoma State, coming off a weird 3-9 record, like a losing season for the first time really since he got there, when you project and you kind of look at this team going into 2025, do you expect them to take a big leap knowing that Mike Gundy is that coach that can win big time games? Can they take a leap from 3-9 to, even if it was like 7-5 or so, and then ultimately, what would be your assessment today of Mike Gundy? Because I think he's still a really good coach despite a bad season.
Exactly. So I would say the same thing, Ballard, that the longer a coach's tenure, the less I'm going to give him a hit for one bad season. If you're a coach and you've had only a 3-year career and you have a bad season, well, that's a huge chunk of your career. Versus if you've been a head coach like Mike Gundy has at Oklahoma State for 20 years, well, 1 year we can understand. We can call that an aberration. So on the positive side, yeah, Mike Gundy's been exceptional at Oklahoma State. He took over for Les Miles. Les Miles started to win there. Gundy took over, and obviously he's been super consistent. Basically, if you take Mike Gundy's record, it is 8-4. He's 8-4 a zillion times over. That's what his record adds up to at Oklahoma State.
Right.
He could never beat Oklahoma. That was a bit of an issue. He beat them like twice in 17 years or something crazy like that. And that cost him a lot of Big 12 championships. So there was a time in which it looked like Mike Gundy was going to bring Oklahoma State to the top of the Big 12. They almost made it to the BCS championship game in 2011. That was the famous Alabama LSU rematch that Oklahoma State had the same record as those two teams, but they lost at Iowa State and they didn't make the BCS, and they won the Big 12. Well, that's the last time he's won the Big 12. That was 2011. So it's been 14 years since. So he's always had good teams, but he's not won a conference championship in 14 years. So let's understand that.
Yeah.
Now, what's really strange about this past season was they go to the Big 12 championship game the year before against Texas, and then they bring back 21 starters. They bring back Ollie Gordon, who's the rushing champion. They bring back their starting quarterback, Alan Bowman. They bring back a slew of excellent wide receivers. They bring the whole team back. They were like poised to make a great run in the big. They just
Yeah.
collapsed. What goes beyond the 3-9, Ballard, is that they went 0-9 in the Big 12, and they were just not competitive. They lost 52-0 to Colorado. They just were an atrocious football team last year. So again, it's 1 year and it looks really bad. And I am taking a shot at Mike Gundy, and he is taking a hit in my rankings, but not by much because he's
Right.
been exceptional mostly for 20 years.
I think he has, outside of this last season, and I think you pretty much just said this, but I'll say it. I think in the Big 12, I think he's been more like one of the stronger and most consistent, more consistent type of coaches, you know, in recent years and really his whole tenure. As far as this season goes, they don't get it too easy. I mean, they get some good games at home. The non-con's pretty solid. Uh, outside of having to play at Oregon week 2, which I think will be a pretty interesting game there. But when I look at their schedule and what he could pull out this year, UT Martin probably going to be a win. Only if he could really turn it around and bounce back, right? I would hope that they don't lose to UT Martin at home. They go to Oregon. We could probably chalk that up as a loss, but I think a lot of people could get their eyes on that game on September 6th. They get an early bye week. Tulsa, Baylor, at Arizona, Houston, Cincinnati, at Texas Tech, at Kansas, and so on. Then they end it with Kansas State, UCF on the road, and Iowa State. That's an interesting schedule. I I feel like he could do something, especially having some of those newer Big 12 teams at home. You do have to play at Arizona and stuff, but Arizona, has kind of, had some good years, had some bad years, here or there recently. They're coming off 4-8 last year. So I think Mike Gundy is really in a good position to bounce back. He could take that 3-9 and maybe flip it to 8-4, 9-3. It's possible. I don't want to make a statement and say that's what I think they're going to do, but I think he's on track. And overall, he's been a really consistent, as you said, head coach, and probably one of the more celebrated head coaches in the Big 12 based on what he's been able to achieve.
So I've had a few Oklahoma State fans come at me and argue with me because I've called Mike Gundy an 8-4 coach,
Right.
but that's what the statistics say. 169-88. If you do the math, that's almost
Mhm.
exactly 8-4. It's actually less than 8-4. And 102-72. That's basically like going 5-4 every year in the Big 12, which is fine. It's decent, but let's not
Mhm.
elevate this guy to like sainthood. Let's see, 3 times 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 top 25 finishes in 20 seasons, 11 out of 20 in the top 25, and he's finished in the top 10 twice. He's had
Yeah.
a nice career. He's had an excellent career at Oklahoma State. And again, we have to put it into context of where the program has been in the past, which has not been very good. So it's not like he's doing this at USC.
Right. It's Oklahoma State. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong because I was really young before Mike Gundy came to town. Heck, I probably wasn't even born, but were they really anything before Mike Gundy got there? I mean, they were pretty much just another dot on the map, right?
So yeah, they were awful for decades, except for Les Miles was the coach before Mike Gundy, and Les Miles did
Okay.
good enough his last couple of years at Oklahoma State to get the LSU job. So he had to do well at the end of his Oklahoma State run to get the LSU job.
Hmm.
So Les Miles, if you look up at like his last 2 years at Oklahoma State, were really strong. He might have went 9-3, something like that. But before that, you got to go all the way back to Pat Jones, who was the head coach for Barry Sanders, and they had some strong teams in the late '80s with Mike Gundy at quarterback, actually, and Barry Sanders at running back. But yeah, a couple seasons. Yeah, Oklahoma State
Yeah.
non-existent from the time I started watching college football up until Mike Gundy, except for 4 or 5 years. Yep.
Yeah. Finally, I want to ask you about one other coach. I see him listed. I want to ask about his program today before you let me go. But let's talk a little bit about Hugh Freeze and Auburn. They had an okay season in 2023 when he gets there. Had somewhat of a down year, tough schedule, couldn't get the quarterback figured out last year. Peyton Thorne's gone. Now they got, I think Hank Brown went to Iowa. I know they bring in Deuce Knight as this 5-star. I feel like the only thing missing for Auburn is that quarterback. you know, at in command of the offense because they got the Perry Thompson, they got Cam Coleman. You know, they've had some solid guys on defense and everything. This is a year for Auburn. Let me put this out there for you. They host, not go to, but they host their rivals, Georgia and Alabama, this year. I don't know about beating Georgia, but they could probably make it competitive. I would also say the same thing about the Iron Bowl, but you also got to think even Nick Saban, who's the greatest coach of all time, would go there and find ways to lose. Is this a year where we could see an upset in that game and ultimately a bounce back year for the Tigers? Could they propel to 6 or 7 wins, make a bowl, and obviously try to win that? What do you say about Auburn? Like, what's your assessment of Hugh Freeze and
I am
ultimately
pretty
what
high on
they could do this
Auburn.
year?
I am pretty high on Auburn, Ballard. I will say yeses on all of those questions. So for me, so their starting quarterback's probably going to be Jackson Arnold. You mentioned Deuce
Right.
Knight. Obviously, he's the hot shot. That's the future. But Jackson Arnold will probably be the starting quarterback. I don't think that's a certainty. He's got to win the job. Um, what's become very obvious to me the last few years since the transfer portal took hold, Ballard, is that these coaches' fate, their destiny is very much tied to how good of a decision they make at quarterback. More so than even in the past, because in the past, if you and I were sitting here 10 years ago, 5 years ago, looking at every team in the country, we could pretty much determine, okay, this guy's the starting quarterback, or these two guys are battling for the spot. And then this guy's the backup. He's a sophomore. And then they got this really guy that they really love that they just recruited. And you knew that was going to be the quarterback room for the next 2 or 3 years. Now we have no idea. If we go through all these teams, I'm guessing 70 to 75% of them have transfer quarterbacks playing for them. So we don't know what's going to happen. And you did a nice job of outlining that Hugh Freeze, part of his demise the last 2 years in losing 7 games twice, has been that he's stuck with Peyton Thorne. He made a bad quarterback decision. When Mike Norvell took over at Florida State, he had a good quarterback that he developed in Jordan Travis, who wasn't a great quarterback, but to Mike Norvell's credit, he developed him, did really great. But then he made a bad quarterback decision in getting DJ Uiagalelei. And we could go team after team after team. And the decision to go into the transfer portal and find a quarterback versus sticking with what you've got and how that played out is obviously, Oklahoma let Dylan Gabriel run off to Oregon, and they put their money on Jackson Arnold because he was their 5-star hotshot. Didn't work out too well. And on and on and on. But I think that Auburn's put a lot of money in the transfer portal. They have really built up the NIL reserves. They've recruited great. I think that they have a team that's ready to roll. I agree with you.
I think, yeah, no, I think so. And I'm not going to call like a 10-win season or the playoffs, but I mean, if they could hit a ceiling of 7-5, 8-4, I think, the recruiting and everything is what's keeping Hugh Freeze alive. He's just got to find a way to really put it out there this year. Now that we assume to have a quarterback to lead the offense, you got Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson out there that you could throw the ball to. Why not go light up the scoreboard? But I'll let you get to some other calls. I love all you guys. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Ballard. Good to see you.
Yep.
All right. We will keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. Keep in mind that the call-in line's available there in the chat. We're going to go for 1 hour with you unless you would like us to extend past that. Otherwise, we will finish up the rankings here on Friday night. And again, the Friday show is not at 4 p.m. Eastern time because we do a late night show with you each and every week. So you have said, you have spoken, meaning Tukey G and I bleed orange. They have spoken. So they said Friday night this week, Mark. So I will be here on Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern time. And once again, we will leave the link in the chat to give me a call. Back to the rankings. What do we got? We left you at Brent Venables, Oklahoma at number 46. You want to talk about a roller coaster ride? Mike Norvell at Florida State. Some of these guys are much easier to rank than others. Think Kirk Ferentz. I don't know that there's a coach in college football that is easier to rank than Kirk Ferentz. You know what you're going to get. He's run the program the same way for 25 years. He goes 8-4 constantly. He's got great special teams, great defense. He's hired a tremendous coaching staff on that side, led by Phil Parker as DC. The offense is a mess, but possibly getting better. I think he's made a great offensive coordinator hire in Tim Lester. But Kirk Ferentz, I would say that there are probably people out there that would rank him close to the top 15 in the country, and there would be others that would rank him down near 30, 35. But he's a rock. He is stability. His program is stability. But you take this next guy, Mike Norvell, what do you rank him? He did not take over a good program. Let's keep that in mind. Florida State was at its worst shape when Mike Norvell took over Florida State. They were in their worst shape since Bobby Bowden took over in 1975. And so what did he do? Well, it took him some time. He had a bad 2020 and 21. And then he had two excellent seasons, 10-3, 13-1, should have made the playoff, won the ACC. Well, then he's got it all figured out, right? No. They just suffered the worst collapse in the history of college football. Find me a worse collapse than 13-1 to 2-10. It does not exist. I do not believe, because I've not been able to come up with it. Certainly it's not happened in my lifetime. So if you can find me a worse collapse from 13-1 to 2-10, so that's what's we're looking at with Mike Norvell. The other reason that he is number 45 in the country and not higher, despite, again, a decent record, whatever that adds up to, all told, I think it's like 30-21. The issue for me, he does not recruit the state of Florida well. He is getting his brains beat in by Mario Cristobal and Billy Napier. He had one or two tremendous transfer portal classes with the likes of Jared Verse and Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, the running back from Oregon, Chris Benson, all those guys, Trey Benson, all those guys, Braden Fisk. But the recruiting, not good. And like we talked about with Ballard, he made a crucial mistake at quarterback last year, and that doomed his team to a great extent. All right, so we'll see. They've overhauled the coaching staff. One of the respected head coaches in college football, much like Chip Kelly a year earlier, has decided, I don't want any part of this anymore. And Gus Malzahn stepped down to become an offensive coordinator at Florida State. So if you can't fix the offense with Mike Norvell and Gus Malzahn, then they will be in trouble. So at number 45, we got Mike Norvell of FSU. We may make a upward move with the next guy, Mario Cristobal. Even though I am not a huge fan of Mario Cristobal, I don't believe that his game management blunders are really overblown. And I know that the one is focused on taking the knee or not taking the knee against Georgia Tech and that debacle. I also think about his last couple games at Oregon, in which they were annihilated by a less talented Utah team, and then they got a shot. Now, when does this ever happen in college football? When you've got the more talented team, you lose like 38-7 to Utah, and then you actually get a rematch in the conference championship game, and you get blown out just as bad. Well, that's ancient history to a certain extent. I am ranking these coaches based on what they're doing right now. And Mario Cristobal did not take over a lousy program at Miami. Manny Diaz did not win a ton of games, but they had top 15 talent. They had a top 15 roster at Miami, and it's taken Mario Cristobal a lot of time to get to the point where he went 10-3 last year after 5-7 and 7-6. So he's not exactly lighting the world on fire. And he just lost the best quarterback in the country. So we'll see if Miami can rebound from that, because they're not going to have anything close to Cam Ward, because they've got Carson Beck, who's a capable quarterback, more than capable, but is he going to be healthy? I am going to look for an opportunity to move up Mario Cristobal, because I do believe that he's better than the 44th coach in the country. But I reviewed this up and down, and I don't know that I can really. Yeah, we'll give him a few notches. We'll find a place for him. Let's see. Because he should not fall after a 10-3 season, even though Miami does benefit from playing pretty horrific schedules in the ACC. Who did Miami play last year that was any good? Probably the best team they played was Florida. And they caught them at the right time, the season opener. That was probably the best team they played. They didn't play SMU. They didn't play Clemson. They didn't play anybody else outside the conference. This year, they're playing Notre Dame in week 1. So Mario Cristobal, we're going to move him up. We are not going to go too crazy on the Billy Napier stretch drive, even though we did move him up quite a bit. So we're going to take Mario and lift him up to number 40. Ironically, his predecessor, Manny Diaz, is at number 44. And sometimes, I think we saw this with Bill Belichick at New England. Sometimes you got to have that first head coaching experience, and maybe it doesn't work out. And maybe you learn a lot, and maybe you get a second crack at it a few years later, and you're a different guy. And Manny Diaz's first season at Duke was quite impressive. 9-4, taking over for a guy that's got a ton of respect in college football, Mike Elko. Manny Diaz's stint at Miami was not good, but it wasn't horrific. I think he takes a bad rap for basically just doing what every other Miami coach has done for the last 20 plus years. He went 21-15. He's recruited well. And again, he took a Duke team that is not loaded with talent, and he finished 9-4. So at number 41, we got Manny Diaz, and we know that he can coach defense. We know he knows defense, did a great job at Penn State and elsewhere. Another difficult coach to rank is Sharon Moore. So something tells me that Sharon Moore is probably better than the 43rd best coach in college football. However, what has he done? Well, on the plus side, he was handed the team when Jim Harbaugh was suspended during the stretch drive of 2023. And what did he do? He won the 3 biggest regular season games of the season. He beat Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. Do we give him credit for that? Yes, he was on the sideline. He had to call the shots. Was it his team? No, it was not his team. It was still coached by Jim Harbaugh from Sunday through Friday night at midnight. But there is a reason that they selected Sharon Moore. Number one, this tells me something. They tried out all 3 head coach or 3 assistant coaches as the head coach when Harbaugh was suspended the first 3 games of the season. And then when they had to revisit that scenario late in the season, who did they go to? They went to Sharon Moore. So he was clearly the guy that they felt most comfortable with being the interim head coach during such a crucial time. So that's a big pro. A big pro this past season was he went into Columbus and beat the best team in the country. and then won a bowl game against Alabama in which half the team was sitting out. Colton Loveland and half the defensive front and Khalil Mullings and all sorts of guys were sitting out, and Michigan beat Alabama, a almost fully stocked Alabama team. So he won the two biggest games of the year. On the con side of the pros and cons ledger, he botched the quarterback decision. Basically, I laid it out in week one. If he would have done what I suggested, I'm sure they would have won maybe two more games by just leaving Davis Warren alone and coaching him out of 2 or 3 mistakes a game. And he blew he didn't blow games. He blew opportunities to compete late in games by pulling Davis Warren in the red zone and putting in Alex Orji. So the quarterback handling was atrocious last year. And then the other thing is that they lost 5 football games. They lost 5 football games. They lost to Illinois, Oregon, Texas. No shame in that. Washington. And who else beat them? Indiana. So, again, something tells me that Jerome Moore is a little bit better than number 43 in the country, but I'm going to have to see it. We've seen one season, and he went 8-5 with a team that should be better than 8-5. All right, I believe we've got a call coming in. Got our guy Nick stopping by. Nick, how's it going?
Oh, hanging in there. How are you, Mark?
I am doing just fine.
All right, so couple things. I'm assuming you're imagining I'm calling in because of you defaming Sharon. No, I'm just kidding. I would just caution. I think atrocious is a little strong. I still agree with you. He completely botched the Davis Warren situation.
Those are the exact words I just used, Nick. He completely botched.
Yeah, he botched. I'd say atrocious is a little strong because they did get it together and beat the eventual national champion. So just me, I'm not going to go as far as atrocious. I'm just curious, though. Out of your opinion,
can I interrupt here, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I gave him a lot of credit for what you just mentioned, but they didn't do that passing the football. So the train wreck that was the passing game continued to be the train wreck that was the passing game. And I don't understand things like this. I don't remember. I could probably come up with a score. They cut the Oregon lead to 28-17. And they're early fourth quarter, Davis Warren, bam, 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 down the field. They get in the red zone. They get to the 10-yard line, and suddenly it's Alex Orji. Why is he there? What's he doing? What are we doing? And they throw themselves into a mess. I forget what happened. Anyway, the same thing happened against Alabama. Now, obviously, they won the game and won it fairly easily. They walked into about 18 turnovers in the first 5 minutes, but that's Alabama's fault. That, again, I saw this early in the game against Alabama, is that Davis Warren is moving the ball down the field. They get down to the 5-yard line, and suddenly Alex Orji, after Davis Warren just threw a couple laser shots, he's in the ball game. This whole business, and Sharon Moore's not the only one that does it, that gets enamored with these second-string quarterbacks who can somewhat run. I just don't agree with it, and I thought it cost him a bit. In addition to not making the right selection as the starting quarterback. You with us, Nick? Hey, Nick. Can you hear me? Hello, Nick? All right. Nick, try back. So that's where I stand on Sharon Moore at number 43. And I know that sounds awfully low, but he coached one season. He coached at Michigan. He lost 5 games. And if you look at this list of coaches, I made this statement the other day, and I basically said that most of these guys, we're not talking about going down to the local McDonald's and saying, okay, they got 22 guys on staff, young men and women on staff here at the McDonald's. How many of them really do a good job? And there's like 3 of them that do a good job, and the rest of them suck because they don't want to be there. No, these are highly, these are high performers. These are high performers who have risen to the top of their profession, and they have been given the keys to head coaching positions of the major college football programs in this country. So most of the great majority of them know what they're doing. So I have tasked myself with ranking them, but you could be in the bottom 10 and still be a capable head coach. Hey, Nick, how you doing?
Hey, my apologies. I don't know what it is, but I was getting another call, and when I do, something about StreamYard on my phone just goes haywire. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I would disagree a little bit. Stat line for Davis Warren was really bad. Obviously, 62 yards, 2 picks. However, there was a handful of really high quality throws from Davis Warren throughout that game. He converted a couple of critical third downs, but I'd have to go back and double check. If Davis Warren doesn't summon his inner JJ McCarthy and roll out to the right and throw a dime to Peyton O'Leary, I don't think Michigan wins that football game. So, while passing wasn't a driving factor, I do think people kind of tend to point at the terrible stat line because that's what sticks out more like a sore thumb. And it's easier to do that than to go back and take a couple hours to break down film. So I get it. But yeah, so I guess I missed the part where you ranked him. Do you have him in the top half of coaches in the Big Ten, Sharon?
Well, I'd have to go through the coaches in the Big Ten, but probably not.
So Ryan Day, you got ahead of him. You got Indiana's coach ahead of him. I don't know.
I'll tell you who's behind him. David Braun of Northwestern, Deshaun Foster, UCLA, Mike Loxley, Maryland, Barry Odom, Purdue.
Minnesota, PJ Fleck, probably?
No.
No? Okay.
No.
Interesting.
You think Sharon Moore's better head football coach than PJ Fleck?
You think PJ Fleck could beat a national champion with a QB thrown for 62 yards and 2 picks? You think PJ Fleck could do that?
Do I think PJ Fleck could not lose 5 games in Michigan? Yeah, because he loses 5 games in Minnesota. He took a much less of a talented Minnesota team and basically took Michigan to the wire last year.
Oh, fair enough. I disagree. I'd put Sharon Moore ahead of him, but
no.
I'm not heavy leaning on either side on that.
You throw Sharon Moore in Minneapolis, and I don't know. He hasn't done anything.
Okay,
PJ Fleck's accomplished quite a bit in his career, and Sharon Moore's got an 8-5 record at Michigan. That's what he's given us, and I gave him a lot of credit. I don't know if you heard my spiel. I give him a lot of credit for what he semi-accomplished down the stretch as the interim head coach, even though he was not leading the program. It wasn't his program, but he was standing on the sideline calling the shots on game day with the 3 most important games on the line.
Now, the only thing, though, is you kind of have to grade on a curve here a little bit. Are you ranking these other head coaches based on, like, I guess part of me wants to put a question mark on Sharon, because if you're referring to just last year, then I'm fine with you ranking Sharon lower. But if you're going back previous years, well, Sharon hasn't been given that opportunity yet. So I don't think that's much of an analysis, honestly.
Well, how do I rank a coach based on an opportunity he's not received yet?
if you want to be more fair, you would go off of last year. You would go off of, if you're looking at it by a
I
conference.
did go off last year. I'm ranking these coaches. This is my attempt, Nick. And this is, you have to do this sometime because it's not easy to do.
Mm-hmm.
My attempt, I'm not ranking these coaches based on their legacy, their resume.
Okay.
Scott Frost doesn't get much credit for what he did at UCF, which was really good. He would not be the lowest ranked coach in the country if I was ranking his complete resume. I'm basically making a determination. These are the rankings of the coaches right this second.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, that actually was my question, because like you said, it's not when you have a coach like Sharon Moore, who's young gun, hasn't been doing this very long, and then you have much more tenured head coaches.
Sure, he should get better.
Yeah. So, but like I said, I actually lean more towards you. Well, you heard me call in. I was very unhappy with the 5 losses, and I still am. I think some of those losses were inexcusable. The Illinois loss, I don't know. They were a good team that was on the road. Michigan had a chance. I actually thought one of the worst botched games of the season by Sharon was that Washington game. If you want to talk about disgusting, just horrible, absolutely horrible. But maybe some of that had to do with his offensive coordinator. But I am curious though. So I'm assuming you have number 1. Let me answer this. Just off the top of your head, who would be the top 3 coaches in the Big Ten for you?
Oh, the top 3 in the Big Ten. And let's understand, this is the most difficult ranking of coaches in all of sports. Meaning, if you're ranking NFL head coaches, they all pretty much run the same operation with the same resources. Here we're comparing Georgia's head coach and Vanderbilt's head coach. We're comparing Ohio State's head coach with Northwestern's head coach, where you've got all the resources in the world and the brand, and you can do almost anything you want, versus you're behind the 8 ball. So trying to weigh that all out is a bit difficult. The top 3 coaches in the Big Ten, I believe I've got, I'm trying to think, who would I be missing? Ryan Day. Who would be my other coaches? I don't know if Lincoln Riley's still in the top 3. I do not. Dan Lanning, Ryan Day, and it's either Kirk Ferentz or Lincoln Riley, unless I'm missing somebody.
Oh, so where do you have James Franklin? Are you coming more over to my side?
It probably is James Franklin.
No, Mark, oh man, we were almost there, man. I got to get you on my team of James Franklin being a complete and total fraud. But that's more of a personal matter. Just because I just can't stand his.
Well, I'm not going to get into your personal matters there with James Franklin, Nick.
No, not like that. I mean more of a personal opinion. I misspoke. Mind out the gutter, man. Come on. What are you doing?
Well, I've taken my shots at James Franklin through the years, but he's still running one of the best football programs in America.
He's just such a douche on the sideline, don't you think? Sorry for using that word, but I can't think of a better word to use.
Meaning he doesn't know what he's doing? No, we've seen much worse. I don't see where he's blowing games. There's a difference between, okay, here comes Penn State again. Oh, they're playing a top 5 Ohio State team or a top 5 Michigan team. And it's predictable. They're either just going to be outclassed all afternoon, or they're going to be on the cusp of winning this game, and then they're going to lose the game. But nobody can really point to, I can think of one situation against Ohio State, but you can't really point to Les Miles, Scott Frost-esque blunders. Like, that is a horrific coaching decision. Fran Brown of Syracuse made a horrific coaching decision that blew a game last year. Like, he doesn't do that. It's just like, okay, well, that was disappointing. They didn't look prepared, or they got outplayed in the fourth quarter. But he's not making the list of all-time coaching blunders.
Okay. Well, I can't argue with a lot of that. I just can't get over the antics. So it's just I don't think it's appropriate. So
They had to have a field goal made for them to not make the national championship game last year. They were tied on the final play of the game of the national semifinal.
yeah. I don't know. He blew. So are you saying he blew the Notre Dame game too?
Well, here's the point of argument right here.
Because he blows every game almost, man.
All right. They were tied against Notre Dame. They get the ball with 40 seconds left with the ball at their own 15-yard line. And it's easy now to say, well, James Franklin should have run the ball into the line 3 times and punted, and that would have been the end of the game, and then you go play overtime. But he's supposed to have one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the nation, and he basically handed him the ball and said, go win this game for me, get me into field goal range, and he trusted his quarterback. And if they would have lost that game in overtime because he shut it down, a 3 and out to get to overtime, a lot of people would have criticized him for, you know what, you can't trust your veteran quarterback who's logged as many snaps as just about anybody in the country in that situation. So he was in a no-win situation, and his quarterback made a horrific decision, and they lost the game. These coaches can't control everything.
No, I understand it. I guess I just think, especially from the Michigan perspective, the amount of late game blown calls, fake field goals on 4th down that didn't convert, just time after time, it just appears to be like he has a higher tendency of blowing it or doing something unnecessary. And also his end of game time management is terrible. But I know, like you said, not all of that's put on the head coach. But when you add all of that in, when you add his atrocious record of the top 10, the lack of top 10 wins compared to the talent that he has acquired at Penn State, when you look at, they finally get a golden ticket into the playoff. And really, what did it mean? How much farther is it really a new step? They won 13 games, but I mean, they had one of the easiest. Have you ever seen a team, and I know the formatting is different this year, so it's unfair, but have you ever seen a team in college football have like more lopsided opponents than? Thank you. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Have you ever seen him?
You could have at least asked if I wanted a milkshake or something.
Oh yeah, I'm at a healthier place than that.
Oh, okay, very nice.
But yeah, I guess I don't know. You made a convincing argument, so I'll let it sit with me and maybe
I'm not ranking the guy as like the second best coach in America. We'll see where I've got him ranked. It's not anything that elevated.
Yeah. Now, I think one of the strongest points that you didn't hear, but you have oftentimes, if I'm being objective, is, well, there is something there with his record of top 10 wins or whatever it is, because it's so lopsided. There has to be something there. You can't expect most coaches to have great records against top 10s or even top 5s. I think you actually made the point. Most coaches have pretty bad records against top 5s, right?
Yeah, because I don't think people think that through. They think, oh, well, if you're coaching at school X that's a top 10 school, then your record against top 10 teams, if you're a really good coach, should be like 75% winning percentage. No, you're looking at like a 50-50 proposition when you're really good, because it's not your record against another school. It's your record against, you're constantly facing top 5, if that's the measurement, teams. Mm-hmm. You might be unranked at a particular time. That's very difficult to achieve a great record against top 5 or 10. What was Jim Harbaugh's record against top 5 and 10 teams? It wasn't real pretty up until his last season.
Yeah, and even he had to go 40-3, and I still think his record against top 5 is not like, great. Yeah, so that's tricky. That's tricky. I did want to ask you real quick, and this will be my last question. Hopefully you haven't talked about it. I'm sure you mentioned it. Nico Iamaleava at UCLA. Now, I just heard yesterday from, I can't remember who, but they were saying it's not a done deal with him at UCLA. I'm going to assume that he's going there until it's proven otherwise. Unless, has there been any update that I'm missing? Or
it was my understanding that from the time it was first reported that it just kind of hung in the balance for like 4 or 5 days, that it needed to be, the T's crossed and the I's dotted and so forth. But that has been accomplished. And his brother also transferred. I don't think his brother would have transferred, especially since he decommitted from UCLA earlier, unless it was a done deal with Nico.
How do you think, obviously you don't think highly, well, really anyone, most people shouldn't think highly of him at this point, but Deshaun Foster, Nico Iamaleava, that whole dynamic, I know he's back home in California, so maybe he'll feel a bit more comfortable. How do you anticipate, how many wins do you think he's worth, assuming that he does improve? I'm not talking about drastic improvement. I'm talking about the normal progression you can expect from a second year starter. How do you think that whole dynamic, what can he lift UCLA to? Or where do you think how all that's gonna work?
UCLA, after Deshaun Foster got settled last year because they were a train wreck the first month of the season, once they took Minnesota to the wire at the Rose Bowl, which dropped them to 1-4, they were a pretty good football team. They beat Nebraska, they beat Rutgers, they beat Iowa. They took USC to a 4-point game. They weren't great. I'm not selling them as some top 25 team, but they were like a top 40 or 50 team. And their offense was pretty bad. They've improved considerably at quarterback. And let's also understand that was his first season starting. Why he would want to leave one of the best offenses and offensive minds in the country, that's a decision that was botched by his dad and his agent. But anyway, and make $2 million less. But anyway, I think that they've improved considerably at quarterback. Nico threw 19 touchdowns and only 5 picks last year. His numbers were very skewed and bulked up against bad teams. Did not play well against most of the good teams on the schedule. But I think that they've improved considerably. He was a mid-tier SEC quarterback last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's better than Ethan Garbers.
I feel like I should know who that is, but I can't remember who.
He was UCLA starting quarterback last year.
Oh, is he the same one that transferred to Tennessee?
Oh, no, they had acquired App State's quarterback, Joey Aguilar. And so he never played for UCLA. He was just set to be the starting quarterback. And then they recruited over him with Nico. And then Aguilar left and went to Tennessee.
Man, I'll tell you, that might be one of the most intriguing storylines of the season. That if you need motivation as a quarterback, I mean, not only did, what you said, I mean, just talent on the roster, UCLA, he's going to be behind a much better offensive line and a much more explosive offense. That's going to be fun because I'll tell you, we will have to keep kind of a close eye on that because if Tennessee gets more consistency out of their quarterback, a more experienced quarterback, and Nico, they kind of let it loose. I don't know. We could see those teams maybe meet up a bowl game or something at the end of the year. That'd be one heck of a story. And college football is driven by the storylines. So, but all right, Mark.
I hear you, Nick. Well, thanks for the call. I appreciate it, man.
Yep. Thanks for taking my call. See ya.
I am in the process of adding up Jim Harbaugh's record against top 10 teams, so I will announce that here in a second.
All right. I'll be listening. Thank you.
All right. Nick stopping by to talk some college football and challenge our coaches' rankings, and we invite that. We appreciate that. Jim Harbaugh through 2020. Okay, now it's going to get a little bit better starting in 2021. All right. What I am doing is adding up Jim Harbaugh's record against top 10 teams at Michigan. And the final record for Jim Harbaugh against top 10 teams while at Michigan. And this is the ranking as of kickoff. Boy, he had to rally. He got 4 big wins against top 10 teams in the close of 2023, his final season. They beat Penn State, Ohio State, Alabama, and Washington to finish at 8-14 against top 10 teams for Jim Harbaugh. Sooner Thrawn stopping by. Look at that. Good to see Minnie and Sooner Thrawn and Matthew. And, of course, another hello to 79 Jed Buck. And Minnie, one of the few that standing up for one James Franklin. Blue Wolverine, good to see you as well. All right, folks, we've had a good show. We've had a good talk. We've had a couple good calls. We've run through our coaches' rankings all the way up. We didn't make too much of a dent. We made it up to, I believe, Sharon Moore at number 43. Fellow Big Ten coach Jed Fish of Washington, giving him the nod over Moore. If for nothing else, Fish won the head-to-head meeting this past season. And, of course, he did a fine job at Arizona. So we got Jed Fish at 42, 10-3 season to finish out with the Wildcats. And keep this in mind with Jed Fish. He took over the most unprecedented change in the history of college football. That's a bold statement, isn't it? That is a hyperbolic statement I just made, that Jed Fish took over a program, a team, in the midst of more change than any team in history. Why? New head coach, new coaching staff. 21 of 22 starters gone, including the starting quarterback, and the caveat, a new conference. You find the team and the head coach who comes in his first season and they lose 21 of 22 starters, including the starting quarterback, completely different coaching staff, head coach in a new conference. That's what Jed Fish faced with Washington. Did they tear it up? No. They went 6-7. They lost a bowl game by 1 point. On the high end, they beat USC. They beat Michigan. They lost to Rutgers because they missed 3 field goals. They could have won that game easily in Piscataway. They got handled pretty well by Indiana. Lost to Penn State in blowout fashion. Really, that was the only time they got manhandled. They got manhandled in the second half by Iowa. The Washington season pretty much turned out the way you would expect it. They lost to Oregon by a couple scores to close out the season. I think they lost by 3 touchdowns there. At number 42, we got Jed Fish. All right, we will be back on Friday. We came so close to achieving our goal of getting to overtime. Boy, it was close. I think I may want to do a recount. That might be in order, because I think we were within $1 or $2 of overtime hour 2. Excuse me while I pull the tongue out of my cheek. There we go. We will see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. No. Late night call-in show on Friday night. We'll see you at 10 p.m. Eastern time. And enjoy the college football here at the Voice of College Football. I know the Michigan show's live tonight. think the Alabama show's live tonight, and a host of others. Check out the schedule that I post each and every day. And in the meantime, we will leave you with this Friday night call-in show, late night call-in show, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Leanne and myself every Wednesday at 8:30, talking recruiting and transfer portal with you. And of course, it's a must. Support the Voice of College Football. You can make a difference here at the Voice of College Football. Use the Amazon link. Financially contribute to the Voice of College Football without spending a penny. Same shopping experience. It's easy. Go to any video on any channel. Go to the description section and grab the link right next to the capital letters that say Amazon. Use that link and Amazon will instantaneously convert to your account, settings, history, everything intact, just like whatever link you use right now. No difference. Pay no attention to the product that you see right there. Just go search what you want. Don't forget the Amazon link. Thank you for your support. Sincerely, the Voice of College Football.